Welcome everyone to Pivot or Bust, activating new strategies fast. We still have people logging on, but we're going to go ahead and get started and they'll join as they can. Hi everybody, I'm Gary Magenta and I'm the Chief Change Architect for Root. And for the last 20 years, I have had the pleasure of helping the world's most influential companies to help them accelerate the speed of change through their people. And change, pivoting, activating new strategies fast is what we're here to talk about today. We're living, working, and leading in a changing and completely unpredictable world. And that means we need to pivot at the pace of the marketplace. You know, for a long time, we've been used to bringing our teams together at in-person meetings and events, and we're updating our 1, 3, and 5-year strategies. But those in-person events are canceled and our strategies, well, they don't have a 3, 5, or 1-year shelf life anymore. So my question to you is, how are you going to rally your teams around today's strategies today? Well, during our time together today, we're going to uncover the best practices to engage and activate your people, your strategy, and bring them together, even if we can't bring our people together. We're going to gain valuable insights on how to accelerate your strategy by creating a change mindset throughout your organization. And we are going to share real-life best practices in real time during this virtual experience. So here's the plan. We'll start with a keynote from our CEO at Root and author, Rich Berens. And he's going to talk about pivoting your strategy and the leadership blind spots you may have that could be standing in your way of success. We're then going to bring you together into breakouts, where you're going to choose your own adventure on the topic that excites you most. So prior to today's conference, we asked you what topic intrigued you most, and your votes are in. Today's breakouts are going to include topics such as engaging people virtually, pivoting your strategy, and customer experience. But don't worry, if your topic wasn't chosen, an opportunity to network during our Conversation Corner segment with like-minded leaders and Root experts. But for now, we want to get started, and we want to kick off with Rich Berens, our CEO and author of Blind Spots. Rich, take it away.
Thank you, Gary. Welcome, everybody. We're excited to have you with us, and I am super excited to get the opportunity to kick this off and hopefully provide you with some interesting thoughts and perspectives as you're thinking about your strategy and how you might have to pivot to be truly successful and work through these crazy times that we're all collectively in, right? And as I thought of the word pivot and pivot your strategy, I couldn't help but think of a Friends show. You know, I've got 2 teenage daughters, and we're looking to do things together as a family in the house. And one of the things we all rallied around was watching Friends. They've become a big fan. And there's one episode in particular where Ross, for those of you who know Friends, is looking to get a couch up into his apartment. And I'll show you a bit of a clip. And even if you are not familiar with the crew, I think you'll still enjoy this. So let's take a quick look at pivoting, and then we'll pick it up after the clip.
Here we go. Pivot. 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 Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Okay, I don't think it's going to pivot anymore. You think?
That's what can happen when you pivot the wrong way, right? And so as we think about our strategies, our goal is obviously to get the proverbial strategy couch into the apartment, right? But there's lots of ways that lots of things that can get in the way and things that can go wrong as we try to do that. And I want to provide us with a couple of things to think about that are hopefully really valuable to you as you progress. Before we get into the details of that, let me just share a perspective in terms of where we see kind of the spectrum of kind of a process organizations are going through, right? And you kind of see that on your screen right now, where you go back to March, April, and most of us, right, and we work across all industries, we're in some form of shock and cope, meaning there's a big storm that disrupted our business in a major way, right? And we were just making sure, from a personal standpoint, is my family safe? How do we deal with this? From a business standpoint, are our people safe? What do we need to do to function in a reasonable fashion in a state of lockdown, essentially, right? And then as you go to May and June, it's more stabilized and recovered. We're still in this storm to a degree, but we now have a sense for what we have and what it'll be, and what are the pivots and the changes we need to make short term to make sure we can operate, we can serve our customers, we can have our employees safe, and all the things where we need to be able to put in place to effectively work while this is going on. And about 80% of our clients are in that stage, right? The middle one. There's a few still on the left. There's a few on the right that never got impacted the same way, but the great majority are in the middle. And then there's the thrive and grow, right? And so what are the things we're also doing right now or starting to think about, so that as we think about 2021 or whenever the medical and economic situation kind of turns the corner in a significant way, that we can be better than ever, right? That we learn from this, we take advantage of the opportunities that it provides, and then we can thrive and prosper, hopefully better than we ever have, right? But the focus here is more, if you're likely in the middle or anywhere near there, what are some things to think about, right? And Jim Howden, co-founder of Root and partner in my business, we wrote a book a couple of years ago on leadership blind spots. So the 5 things that leaders don't always get right, that really get in the way of them activating their strategy and engaging the people in the most effective way. And their purpose, story, engagement, trust, and truth related. And when I talk blind spot, what I mean by a blind spot, it's an area where our existing beliefs and experiences preclude us from having the most enlightened view on how to lead people effectively, right? And so this is often with the best of intentions. We're doing some things that are just not giving us the best results because we don't have the best understanding of how things really work or how they're perceived. And there's 2 of these blind spots in particular that I think have real relevance right now as we're going through drastic change, as our businesses are being challenged, our business models are being challenged, our strategies are being challenged, that I really want to call out and draw some attention to. And the first one is on story, right? In the sense that we have a compelling story to tell that our people care about, right? And as we think about story, there's 3 things in particular I want us all to keep in mind, right? And the first one is that it's really important to be clear on the story that you have, because chances are, and there was lots of work being done, and you had a story, you had a strategy 3 or 4 months ago that now in this new world that we live in might not be relevant anymore, only partially relevant. There's a lot of different shifts, right? And so how clear is your strategy story? And as you think about that, do you have clarity on what winning really looks like and what it feels like from your stakeholder perspective? So how your customers need to be served and will need to be served, your employees and how they will work and the processes for them to work within, and then expectations of your community and your shareholders. So how has that story evolved? What does that story look like? Are we clear on the initiatives to help us get to this new future, this new world, this new strategy we now need to enact in order to get to this new world? And then for a lot of your people, how do I connect and have an impact? What's my role in this, right? There's a big question with a lot of the CEOs I've talked to or the clients we're now working with. For the most part, they're getting high marks for being authentic, responding quickly to the crises. But there's real questions that people have around, where do we go from here? Do we have a plan for how to win and what that looks like? And clearly not all the answers exist because we're in the middle of that storm, but there's real questions out there and a real opportunity to engage your people in that effectively and make sure you have that clarity of that story. And as you think about your story, just 2 other things to keep in mind. One is, as you share that story and you create that story, just make sure you don't go to sort of bingo buzzwords and business language that just doesn't resonate with a lot of folks, right? And we see that a good amount. Overuse of terms that can mean a lot of things and mean little and don't really resonate with people, especially if you're really trying to reach them authentically and emotionally. Because the other thing to keep in mind is, in times like this particularly, you got to get to the heart, right? If you get to the heart, the mind will follow. People are a little lost, they're a little confused, they're uncertain, they're not sure, and you want to reach them authentically, right? And so you got to make sure there's emotional appeal in the strategy story so people can connect with it in a meaningful and a powerful way. The second piece on story is to make sure, assuming you have that clarity, that you have shared meaning, starting at the top of the house, but then within the rest of the organization. And shared meaning is different than using common words. And I'll give you an example, right? I'm going to ask you to close your eyes here for 10 seconds. Go ahead, close them. Like seriously, please. Give me 10 seconds. I'm going to say a word, and I want you to, in as much detail as you can, put the image behind the word. So here goes. Bear. Right? So you probably got a pretty particular image. And if I asked you now, if we did sort of a, tell me what it is, you'd say things like grizzly bear or polar bear. And then somebody might say bear aspirin or a bear market or the Chicago Bears, all kinds of different pieces. The point being is I just said one word and we had all kinds of different visual imagery and meanings behind it, right? If I now said customer service or customer experience or innovation or agile, we have all kinds of different mental models, and it's the mental models and the imagery that we act upon, because that's what gives us meaning, right? Hence shared meaning. And so that's where we got to make sure we're on the same page as we're creating new strategies, new language around the strategies, and trying to activate that. You know, we were with a large global chemical company, and we were with the head of a business division and the strategy person, and they were telling us their story, and we tried to help, and so we visualized some of it, and when we came back a couple of days later to review it, one said, "Oh, that you weren't listening at all. This is not what I was talking about." Well, the other person said, the strategy guy said, "Well, I think that's exactly what you were talking about." And the other said, "Well, that's what I said. That's not what I meant." Whoa, that's a big moment, right? And so we got to make sure we have shared meaning, common meaning. So as you think about your strategy, make sure you have shared meaning at the top of the house. But then really as it cascades into the organization, really critical aspect of pivoting effectively with your strategy and at scale, right? And then lastly, as we think about story, you got to make sure you authentically connect with your audience, right? So I'll take you back to 1963, the dawn of the civil rights movement. There's a march on Washington, 250,000 people coming to Washington, and Martin Luther King is closing out the 2-day event to help galvanize, right? And so for days he's preparing his speech with his team, laying out a lot of the policy points. And so he presents it. It's a hot day, and he's not really fully connecting with the audience, to be honest. He's kind of losing them, right? And one of the people traveling with him, a friend of his, leans over and says, Martin, stop, tell him about the dream, right? And he shifts and he tells us about the dream and gives one of the most profound speeches in the last 60 years. The point of this being, here's one of the greatest speakers and orators of the last, 60, 70 years, and he wasn't connecting with his audience. He needed a friend, Amalia Jackson, to remind him on how to pay attention to that. And he did, and he shifted, and it made all the difference in the world. So as you think about your strategy and the story of your strategy, make sure you also really understand your audience and you find ways that it meaningfully connects with them, so that you emotionally pull them in, so that they identify with it and it resonates with them, right? And so, because if it resonates with you, not with them, obviously things are going to get stuck, especially in a time as we're in right now, where speed matters, the agility to shift quickly matters, and getting people's hearts and minds in the game and keeping it in the game is so critical. So that's the piece on story. Clarity of it, shared meaning around it, and then ultimately authentically connecting it to your audience, so you can pivot as quickly as you desire, right? The second piece and blind spot to be aware of is around truth, and it's the sense that people feel safe on how they really think and feel. And this is a time, once again, when we have cost pressures, restructuring conversations, and all kinds of other concerns and considerations, that people are even more careful or naturally more careful and want to play it more safe. And that's really not good, because it's a time when you need information to travel quickly. so you can adjust and pivot as you see fit, right? And the interesting thing is, when we're kids, as we grow up, until we reach middle school, we're great truth tellers, right? If you ask somebody in elementary school to draw your mommy and your daddy, the actual, and not my family, by the way, but actual pictures, people people will kind of kids will draw what they feel, what they think, without filter, right? And then in middle school, it starts going away. And as we get into a corporate setting, truth telling becomes harder and harder. And then often we find that the truth gets told in largely 3 places rather than the places where it should be. And that's the hallway, the water cooler, or in the bathroom, right? Kind of check under the stall, make sure it's safe, and then you speak to those that you trust, right? And why is that, right? And it's things like, from an employee perspective, if I speak up and disagree, will I be the team member who doesn't get to play, right? Or will they really take my comments the right way and make sure my intention is for the good of the business? Or, as you see there at the bottom, could that really be a career limiting move, right? And especially right now, I don't want to do that, right? I like my job. I don't want to rock the boat, so to speak, right? And that's a lot of the thought bubbles out there. On the leader side, it might be, if I'm really going after the truth here and have this, is it an indictment of my leadership? Or what if I don't have all the answers, because I likely don't right now, or I'm just not comfortable being vulnerable, right? And those are all the things that get in the way of a truth-telling culture and a truth-telling environment, and that you need to be aware of, because they're enhanced and elevated right now, and they're real danger points. Once again, to speed, to the ability to pivot, to news traveling, and the kinds of things you really need now more than ever. Now, there's a concept of the court jester, right? In the Middle Ages, you had the court jester, and the court jester was one of the few truth tellers to the king and queen, right? One of the folks who could do it without suffering serious consequences, right? Because in many ways it was the job to do that in a funny way and serve things up. And so you want to think about, what are your court jester mechanisms, either people or processes that allow you to listen, to have dialogue, to make sure the culture gets fostered around truth telling, so that you don't develop blind spots that really hinder you right now when you need to shift faster and need to be more agile than ever. One of the things we've done with clients, and it's an interesting thing for you to explore as you look at your core jester mechanisms, what are some of those core truths out there that we should be worried about, that could be getting in the way of pivoting with our strategy and executing? And we've captured some of these, because sometimes just capturing them brings a clarity to what we need to work on, right? And so for a home builder, we do not probe the business for performance, and we don't know the difference between good and lucky in our 24 divisions, right? A manufacturer, we don't set stretch, credible goals that are owned and believed in through execution. And I've heard a lot of this in the last 2 or 3 months talking to our clients, where we've got these goals and I just know they're not realistic, but we haven't really addressed it, or we haven't reconciled some tension points. And so we're all kind of losing faith in some of that, and it's not doing us any good. So you want to be aware of that. Or another one, we're a people company, yet we don't prioritize developing people. We aren't good at it and don't like doing it. So but whatever those truths may be, make sure you can get clear on them and find ways to address them and work through them, because it is so critical right now to your speed. So in short, think of the 2 blind spots that could really help you. One is on story, and the clarity, the shared meaning, and the authentic connection with your audience. The second is on truth, and have the vulnerability to have the conversation, have your court jester listening devices, capture those truths and find mechanisms to work on them, and make sure that people feel safe in the environment that we're in, as safe as we can be, right, in an era of uncertainty, because it'll make a big difference. So that's all I got. Hopefully that was a lot I threw at you, but hopefully it was thought-provoking, gave you some things to process. And there's also a breakout later on that if you want to dive into this some more, I'll be around to have some further conversations. But let me turn it back to Gary, Mr. Gary Magenta. Gary, take it away. Back to you, my friend.
Thank you, Rich, for sharing those leadership blind spots with us. Everyone, you'll see there's an event chat available for you. So go ahead and provide some feedback. There's a question in there right now. Let us know what resonated most about Rich's comments this morning. Go ahead and chat them in, and we'll sum them up later. Rich focused on two potential blind spots that you may want to pay particularly close attention to right now, and they were story and truth telling. Stories are as old as time in the most memorable way and the fastest way to share information. So as you think about your story, think about crafting it with a compelling future state, that North Star that everybody wants to get to, as well as a really honest assessment of where you are today, and include the chapters or milestones of how you're going to get from here to there. Make sure your story talks about the contribution everyone can make to be a part of that winning team, because we all want to be part of a winning team. You're doing this to create an emotional and intellectual connection that will propel that story off the page and into action. Leaders, as Rich said, you've got to be clear and aligned on your pivot strategy story, because you're going to need to share it consistently and often. As Rich said, yesterday's story may not be today's story or tomorrow's story, so we have to make sure we're telling the right story at the right time. Stories connect that heart and mind of your people, and that connection is how you tap into their discretionary effort. And within that discretionary effort lies the difference between your business just sort of surviving and thriving. And next, Rich talked about truth-telling. As Rich said, truth-telling becomes harder as we enter the workforce. We start to ask ourselves, if I tell the truth, would it be career limiting for me? So please stop and ask yourself if you, as a leader in your business, are demonstrating and fostering truth-telling. Ask yourself if you're being vulnerable. It's your responsibility to make people safe enough to tell the truth. Within those truths lie innovation or your pivot strategy itself. Allow yourself and your teams to bring out your inner court jesters. It's so important, especially now. So before we go into breakout sessions, I want to share a little bit about what we're seeing in the polls and chat. So we asked the question about, where are you at today? Are you at shock and cope, stabilize and recover, or thrive and grow? And it's sort of a bell curve. There's 8% of you that are saying that you are still in shock and cope. And for many industries, that is totally understandable. 69% of you, so the vast majority of you, are saying you're in stabilize and recover. Congratulations, we're really glad you're there. And then 23% of you are in thrive and grow. And wow, you are in rarefied air. So 8% shock and cope, 69% the bulk of our people in stabilize and recover, and 23% in thrive and grow. A few of the chats, Don says, shared meaning around your story requires solid feedback from everybody. Thank you, Don. We've got to get everybody's perspective when we're building a story. And allowing vulnerability in the corporate setting, an aspect of truth in story. We've got to get authentic. So some chats around that. And the visualization was a great way to show how we all think differently, meaning the bear exercise. So think about that at bear exercise and really recognize that while we're using words, they may have different meanings for different people. One last one I'll get to here in the chat is leadership that's not afraid of bad news or hearing about potential barriers. Really, really important. So many wonderful companies have literally gone down or gone off course because leadership's not willing to hear the bad news. So if you're a leader, be a truth teller. And if you are an influencer, make sure you're holding up that mirror to those leaders in your business. And we get to talk about those things a little bit more right now in our breakout sessions. So we want to put that storytelling and truth telling into practice. So we're going to move into a breakout session where you'll be able to sort of choose your own adventure. At Root, we believe in interactivity, discovery learning, and the power of dialogue. So for the rest of the conference, we're going to do just that. During the breakout sessions, you're going to have an opportunity to share your audio and video and be in that conversation, not just a bystander. That conversation is with Root leaders and your peers. So please make sure you share both your audio and video. And don't worry, most everybody's in their PJs, so you're going to fit right in. Relax if your hair is not combed. We've got 3 awesome topics for you in these breakouts. The first is customer experience. And while there is a wholesale change going on around the world, what remains consistent is the importance and the impact of customer experience. Our Root expert, Phil Hamburg, will share our point of view on customer experience that you can take back to your organization. It's going to be really solid information from Phil, and you'll get to participate. Then we're going to have pivoting your strategy, and that's led by Brad Howden, our Senior Vice President of Client Services. Brad has the opportunity to work firsthand with leaders to align on their pivot strategies and deploy those strategies quickly. Brad helps his clients pivot at the speed of the marketplace, which is necessary for all of us right now if we want to get to that thrive and grow stage. And then finally, we have engaging people virtually. That's led by Meredith Belman. She's a partner at Root and an expert in how to engage people virtually. Meredith believes, and I love this, that virtual conferences aren't something you just have to settle for or endure. They are, in fact, a powerful tool to activate your employees. Virtual engagement offers a world of possibilities for you, your people, and your company. So check into that breakout if that's of interest to you. Here's what we're going to do. There is a session button. It's right here at the upper left-hand side of your screen. When that session button goes live, and you'll see it go live, click on it, and you'll be able to see those 3 sessions I just outlined. Then click the session you'd like to join, and you're in. It's that simple. Brad and Phil are waiting for you in those sessions. So left-hand side, when the session button goes live, click it. Thank you, everybody. Have a great breakout, and I'll see you on the other side.
Let's get started. Hi, everyone. So glad to see all of your faces. So this will be a very interactive session. You can see I've got some slides that I'll be sharing. You can choose for yourself how you want to let things, or how you want to view your screen. You can keep it tiled so you can see everyone, or if you want to see my slides a little bit bigger, you can just double click on that little tile. And you can toggle back and forth throughout. So feel free at any point to just jump in, ask a question. You can ask questions of me. You can also ask questions of your fellow participants. The goal of this is to just have a conversation. We are all in uncharted territory in some ways, in lots of ways maybe. And virtual events are something that, I've been doing for a long time, and I believe are here to stay. And I actually hope are here to stay because there's a lot of possibility and opportunities in virtual events, and a lot of ways to make them really memorable and successful. So we'll talk about that. And I see a few people are still trickling in. We may have people coming in and out throughout, which is fine. And also feel free to use the chat. You may want to slide over to the session tab in your chat, and then we can have a smaller group chat, just the 20 or so of us. Okay, so to get started, just to do a super quick introduction. So my name is Meredith Belman. I'm a partner at Root. I've been at Root like 10 and a half years. My area of expertise is customer experience, but also events. And I've been working on events for about 20 years. And I help lead, I'm leading our virtual meetings and events center of excellence or capability for Root. And the truth is we've been doing virtual engagement, virtual conferences for a long time. So this isn't new for us. What is new is, because of COVID, the need and people's interest has now, quadrupled or has exploded in some ways. So we're able to put a lot of the things that we've done in the past together in new ways. So that's just a little bit about me. If you want to introduce yourself, feel free to put it in the chat. Let's be friends for the next half hour and get to know each other a little bit. And then, as I said, if you have questions or something you want to add, feel free to just jump in. And I will go ahead and just go through a couple of these slides. So the first thing that I want to share, let's talk about virtual events and engaging people virtually. And my hope for the next 25 minutes or so is to share some best practices. I think Root has 3 guiding principles that we believe are critical to having a successful, meaningful, and memorable virtual event. And they transfer also to any kind of virtual ways that you want to engage your people. So it doesn't have to be, a 2,000 person event. It can be that, but it doesn't have to be. These principles and the way that we build virtual experiences ties to anything. Hi, Pamela. Thanks for introducing yourself. I'm glad you're here. All right. So the first thing I think where we all need to turn the corner a little bit is in our mindset. So for a long time, a lot of us felt like a virtual event was a second best, or was a consolation prize to being able to do something really big and flashy in person. And I'm here to tell you, and hopefully you're getting a little taste of it in this session today, is that a virtual event does not have to be a second best. In fact, I believe in a lot of ways, doing a virtual event unlocks possibilities and capabilities and opportunities that you don't have in a traditional in-person event. And that's all around how you use the time differently and how you can give people a really, what I like to call is like create a rhythm to people's experience. So we're going to be together, all in like about 90 minutes today. You're going to get a lot of content. You're going to have the opportunity to talk to each other, socialize, and then you'll go back to the rest of your day. Unlike a traditional in-person event where like we bring everyone together and we feel like we have to do everything, I don't know about you all, but I've certainly been to those conferences where it's like a fire hose because you're together and as an organization, you want to maximize that time. And so you just throw everything you can at people. And with a virtual event, because there's really very little incremental cost to additional people or additional time, you can use it differently. Which I think is really important to think about as you craft the experience. So I'm guessing since we're all here that we're bought into some of those benefits and possibilities of doing virtual events, but just to make sure we're all on the same page, I have 6 up on the screen that I believe if you can help really create a dynamic virtual experience, and also are the advantages to doing to engaging your people virtually. So I'm not going to go through all 6 of them in a lot of detail. And if anyone has questions, again, please feel free to just shout them out or put them in the chat. So the first one obviously is cost. So without travel costs, F&B, space rental, insurance, speaker fees, all those things, a virtual event can be much more cost effective, which as an event planner allows you to then put your budget toward content or sustainment or really embedding change management so that the things you do during your event, you're able to actually sustain and keep the messaging and momentum going. And so I would say if there's one main thing or one main lesson about how you can really maximize your virtual engagement, it's by not thinking of it as an event and then everything else, sort of like you would at a traditional in-person event, but really thinking of it, stretching how you think of it so that your sustainment, your post communications, any reinforcement you do is embedded in your original planning of the event. So cost, what I just said about stretching your definition of experience gets to number 2 as well. And again, where you can scale it, one of the things too, and, kind of give me a nod if you've experienced this, as when we do in-person traditional in-person events, often, right, we'll bring one person, like a regional manager or a general manager or some kind of leader, and then it's incumbent upon that person to bring all the information back to their team or their people and have to translate it. How many of you have experienced that as either the leader or as part of your planning? Yeah, I see some nods. Okay. Thanks. Thanks, everyone. Yes, exactly. Thanks, Eric. Exactly. And what's beautiful about a virtual event is you can scale up and have entire teams or entire regions be getting the content firsthand. So they're much more scalable with really no additional cost. And that way everyone's hearing the same message potentially at the same time and can start changing behavior or taking action, implementing strategies, whatever your objectives are of your event right away. And there's no game of telephone or additional like complexity of translating that message. The other couple things here are just about like creating really multi-dimensional events. So using breakouts and using video and keynotes and audio, similar to what we're doing today. In this 90 minutes, you've already seen live keynotes, you saw some pre-recorded video, you've slides. Now we're in a breakout with everyone. And going from big to small is really important also in keeping people's attention. I just read a new report from the event planner, from like an event planner research project, that people's attention spans right now are 11 minutes. Bill, that was my reaction too. So if, gone are the days of, an hour or 90-minute keynote that's going to hold people's attention. So the key is you've got to have a lot of programming in little chunks of time and keep it multidimensional so that people, essentially you're keeping them on their toes and you're giving them actions to do, whether it's put things in chat or I did see you looking at your other screen, Bill. Or no worries, there's no shame in your game. It's all good. Or bringing them into different rooms, using links, things like that to keep things exciting, multidimensional, and surprising. All right, and then the sixth one is just about data collection, and I can talk a little bit more about that in a little while. Give me a temperature check. Is this making sense so far? What questions might people have, or anything you would add or even challenge? Feel free to put it in the chat, or you can jump on audio.
Hi, I have a question.
We're good?
This is Chad.
Hi, Chad. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, so as I sit here and multitask while you're going through this, I have a question about multitasking in this environment. So in a world where productivity is, we're all measuring productivity in this environment, is multitasking through something like this, do you recommend encouraging it, discouraging it? Is it asking people to put pencils down and asking Bill not to look at his other screen during something like this? Or is it something where we're asking people to try to thrive while paying attention to this session, any virtual session, and getting some work done on the side?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think it's an and. So you're not going to be able to get people to not multitask through long stretches of time. But if there are moments that are most important in which you want to focus them, there are cues you can use to get people's attention. So you can, even little things like me as a speaker, if I were to say, if you were multitasking and I were to say, as you see here on the screen, just that little cue brings people back. But I don't want to use that all the time. But if I have a slide or I have a talking point that's most important, I'll plug that in before that to make sure I'm getting people's attention. But the truth is, like, especially right now when many of us are working from home, we all know that most likely your phone is within arm's reach of you right now. And that's how it is. And I don't think that is not a fight worth fighting. Yeah, exactly. It's not a fight worth fighting. But so what you have to do is prioritize where you want people's focus. And if there are moments where you also do want to have them writing, I think that's a great way to do it. Everyone take a minute, and I want you to write down your 3 takeaways. Bill's doing it already. Perfect. Yep. So using those cues, but I think not expecting people not to be multitasking is a futile battle. Yeah. Great question. Any other thoughts or questions so far? All right. I'm going to move on to I'm going to skip through this animation. And so at Root, we've got 3 guiding principles that these were built through research and Root's 30 years of experience engaging people and doing events. And really they're born out of, this is how you can create a differentiated, memorable, seamless virtual experience, whether it's a 10-person meeting or a 10,000-person conference. And no matter how long it is, these are really the 3 things that you need to keep in mind and develop toward. And there are a lot of companies out there that do 1 or 2 of these, whether it's like a production house or keynote writers. But what you as an event planner or you as a strategic person or a communicator or whatever it is as a plan helping with events, you've got to make sure you're thinking about all 3. And so they are: consider content above all, invest in experience, and facilitate human connection. So in some ways you can think of them as content, production, experience. And the key here is, so if we think about content, put that first. Just because your company has been using Zoom or WebEx or Skype or whatever it is for a long time, and that's what people are used to, still make a decision what your content is and what the best vehicle to communicate it is. And if that's going live with a keynote, or maybe it's a film or a podcast, there are so many tools in all of our toolboxes. It can be overwhelming, but the key is to think about what that content is and what's the best way to communicate it, and put that first. The second one is invest in experience, and that's some of your production stuff. So today we decided to go pretty low fidelity, but if you were doing a big conference, this is where you could still have some set design and production, and if you wanted to, you could put green screens behind people or create custom Zoom backgrounds. But for example, just for this event, for everyone at Root who's speaking, we sent everyone good quality microphones to make sure that you could hear us clearly and that we didn't have any audio issues. That kind of stuff that if you were doing in person, you wouldn't expect your speakers to bring their own AV equipment. So if you're doing a virtual event, you don't necessarily expect them to do the same. Send kits with good cameras or a ring light and good microphones. It's really about thinking about your event space and how you can help your employees and your people still feel like they're showing up to a highly produced, polished event. And it doesn't, when I say invest here, it doesn't mean it's big, it has to be big dollars. But it means think about it, plan for it, and spend maybe a little bit of money to make sure that your event is seamless. Slide designs, making sure you've got event branding, communications, those kinds of things fall into this as well. And then the third one is facilitate human connection. And this is the one I probably get questions about the most, and is the most different between a traditional in-person event and a virtual event, but can also be the most powerful. And this is what we're doing right now, where all of us are on camera and we can chat using the chat, but we can also chat live, is a great example of it. Or what we do in about 20 minutes when we move to this social platform is also an example. But how do you still give people the opportunity to make live connections, feel connected, and attached to their organization, their team, their company is really what this is about. And, for those of you, I saw in the chat, a few of you who've worked with Root in the past, this is core to our methodology, which is around using dialogue and helping people have conversations. And that absolutely is possible and can be done in really cool ways in a virtual environment. So these would be the 3 guiding principles that if Root we applied, well, as we created this event today, we use them. And every client we work with, when we help with meetings and events, we use these as well. Okay, I see, Regina, you put a question in the chat. There's bound to be tech challenges. How do you decide on the technology to use? Why Hopin and not Zoom? Great question. There are definitely bound to be tech challenges. Fortunately, I think we're all in a space right now where there's a little bit of grace if you have some technology flubs, although I don't know how long that's going to last. But again, I think that's where putting your content first and your event objectives is important. So if you're just looking to have a leader of your organization do a one-way communication, then there are platforms that are great for that. But if you want to be able to have interactivity and people to see each other on camera and different people sharing, then you want to take a look at what the capabilities of other platforms, which to your second question is why we chose Hopin today. Because Hopin allows us, we like the interface of it, and it allows us to do live, pre-recorded sessions, and we just like the way that it, honestly, as I was talking about giving that multi-dimensional experience, I think it does that really well. And for a lot of organizations, there's still security things with Zoom where they're not approved. So we wanted to show you just a platform. So that's the other thing, since Root has been doing virtual events for a long time, we have a whole Rolodex of platforms and capabilities. And we figured for a lot of you today, perhaps you hadn't seen Hopin. Most people have seen Zoom at this point. So we wanted to expose you to a new platform and show you that, again, how many tools there are out there, and that we can help you figure out which ones will be right for your meeting or your event. Cool. Any other questions or thoughts? All right. I will sneak to the next slide then. Okay. So I talked about experience and stretching your definition of experience. And I think this is the other key thing. So as we think about crafting a virtual meeting, think about it as an experience. And any experience that anyone goes through, has anyone seen this experience framework before? Give me a sort of thumbs up or anything. No? Okay, beautiful. So this is a pretty well-known framework, and it applies to any experience that we all have. Awesome. Okay, glad you have, Julie. Maybe that was on the call you and I were on together. So any experience you go through, all of us go through these 5 things. So even if we think about this meeting today, you first found out about it in TICE, you entered, we had that pivot rolling video going. Engage is the meat and potatoes of the event. We'll have a good exit moment, and then the extend. And then literally any experience you have. John, yes, I'm happy to send these slides out after. So yeah, you'll get a follow-up from us and it'll include the slides. So the key here about a virtual event is that you can really stretch and be so much more intentional with how you craft these 5 milestones and how you craft people's experiences. And that creates a really powerful and memorable event that gives people the opportunity to actually implement in their lives and in their jobs the content you're giving them. So I like to sort of liken this to when I went to graduate school. I went part-time at night while I worked full-time. And that to me is sort of similar principles to stretching your experience, because I would go to school, I would learn something at night, and then I would apply it the next day at work. And then I would come back the next night and have a dialogue about it what worked, what didn't work. And then I would go to work the next day and apply it and refine my approach. And I had this rhythm to how I was learning and applying things, as opposed to, if you go to school full time and you learn everything and then you go and you get a job, and they kind of live in two different boxes. And what we can do with a virtual event is combine them so that you're learning, you're applying, you're discussing, you're processing, and that's all happening interchangeably. And we can make sure that we're creating these moments where people get the opportunity to be engaged, to think about what they're learning and implement it in their jobs. And then come back in a small group like this and discuss what worked and what didn't. And so that's a really powerful mechanism that you can build into any virtual event you do. So I like to encourage everyone, all clients we work with, to do, large leadership messaging, and then give people a chance to process and talk with their teams, and then come back and just create like that back and forth, again, that big and small. And part of this is because how many of you, for most events you've maybe ever been to, it looked like this? Maybe there was a good amount of communications that came out at first, kind of a big event, and then, pretty much everything went into the engage. And then you said you were going to get takeaways, but like it kind of trickled away. Does that look familiar or feel familiar to events you've been to before? I know I sure have. So again, our opportunity then is to balance this out, which gives people a more natural and organic feeling to events, and just allows them to retain content better and the information that you are taking so much time and investing, resources, et cetera, to share with them. And then the last thing I wanted to share, and this slide has a lot to it, and I know I'm actually giving you guys a ton of content right now. So this is an event we are currently working on. And I thought it would be helpful to just see how this can come to life. This is for about 400 people. And the way that we think about it is we take those guiding principles that I just shared, and then that experience framework, and we think about all the ways that we can engage people. And so we use these six interaction types and put them through the framework of the experience framework that I just shared, and try to build out. And as you can see, it's not important to be able to read the words here, but what you can see in this tile is that we're building and really crafting an experience that gives people the opportunity to reflect on their own, hear keynotes, and they're alternating, and they're doing it over the course of several days and actually several weeks to learn how to change. And as you can see, it's about seeing around corners. So anticipating and making changes. An example of individual other would be like individual reflection. So Eric, if I were to say, okay, everyone, we're going to give you 10 minutes, and either we could send you a PDF or just say, take out your notebook and write out some actions, or it's stuff that you do away from your computer on your own. We have some mobile apps and mobile things that we do as well to get people away from the four walls of their computer screen and using their phone. So there's different ways, again, to like make it multi-modality. Personal goal setting is a great example, Cindy. Yep. Yeah. Okay, so we have like another couple of minutes. What questions or thoughts? What's resonating, or what kind of events are you all planning? I just threw like 6 or 7 questions at you, but feel free to jump in.
Hey, Meredith.
No questions?
Meredith?
Yeah.
This is John.
Yeah.
Do you have any sense of length of time of a given session that's optimal?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking that, John. So I think for the most part, we try to limit seat time, depending on what people are doing. If it's interactive, you get a little bit more room. Keynotes, no more than 20 minutes. 15 is really ideal. And any blocks of time on a calendar, 3 hours is really your max, with breaks included and different chunks of time within that. But really, we try to break things into 20 or 30-minute blocks.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah. And I'm happy to, depending on the activity, we've got some guidelines. I'm happy to dig into that further with you anytime. Okay. So believe it or not, we used our time. Thank you all so much for joining. And let me just say, my contact information is in the hop-in. It'll also come in the follow-up you get. I'll also be in the networking time we're going to do in a minute. So hit me up anytime, anywhere, anyway. I would be so thrilled to talk to any of you about events you're planning, give you, any ideas or guidance I have. We've been doing this for a long time and have done a lot of these. So I'm happy to help any way that I possibly can. So thank you so much for attending. If you don't mind, so if you go to the left of your screen where you see the stage is live again with that red button, you can head back that way. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Meredith.
Welcome back to the stage area, everyone. It was sort of hard pulling you away for those conversations. It seemed like you were really into them, but we are glad that you're back here at the main stage with us. And thank you to Meredith, Brad, and Phil for leading those discussions, those sessions. Meredith's session on virtual conference had the majority of people sort of swarm in there. So it looks like it's a hot topic for us today. Why don't we go ahead and see what really resonated with you? If you wouldn't mind, go into your chat box and let us know what your key takeaway was from the session you attended. Now, I've got about a 15-second delay in when I can see the chat. So while I'm waiting, I'll let you go ahead and chat and also remind you that we're putting up some more poll questions for you. So make your way to the chat box and make your way to the polls as well. So I see one poll that says 73% of you are saying that you're pivoting to virtual and trying to figure it out. And I guess that's why you're here today. So we're happy to have you on that. Keep filling in your chat and your polls, and I'm going to come back to them before we transition to the next segment. But in the meantime, I want to tell you what we're going to do next. Next, we're going to move into some social and networking time, where you can learn from your peers just like you're in a real conference, except you're probably not going to get a cocktail in one of those little, hors d'oeuvre things. But you still will get to talk to one another. So I'm encouraging you have to join this experience because the platform we're using is really cool and it's a great way to bring people together in a virtual environment. The root experts are going to be there too. So if you're in the middle of the conversation with one of the root experts and you want to pick it up, you'll be able to do that in the conversation corners. So here's what's going to happen. In a minute, we're going to put a link into your chat that will take you to the Yo Tribe platform. You'll click that link and a new window or tab is going to pop up. Now, at this point, you can close out of Hop-In if you'd like, but that Yo Tribe link or tab is going to pop up. Once you get into Yo Tribe, that platform is going to prompt you to take a screenshot picture of yourself. I did it. It's very easy. A screenshot picture of yourself and answer an icebreaker question. That's it. Then you'll be in conversation corners and you'll be able to move around, socialize, and meet our experts and chat in real time. You'll also be able to see where our experts are positioned. So when you get in, you'll see these little circles and the experts will be in there. Click to where you want to go. Click to the space you want to go and your picture will automatically move on there. Click there, hold it down, and your avatar will move into that space. You'll see your expert Click where you want to go. Your avatar will move into that space as long as you hold the button down. Now, before we go, let me see what we've got here in the polls. So it looks like over half of you are using town hall or all company meetings to tell your stories and to communicate. So I'm interested in learning more in this next segment on how that's working out for you. So we're hearing people say that this virtual experience is helpful. And regarding strategy, keep it simple and speak often. That is so key. Keep your message or your story simple and say it a lot. And here we say explaining the WIFM for people as strategy changes is important. It certainly is. And for those of you who don't know, WIFM is what's in it for me. Someone else says that they like that she, and I'm assuming that's Meredith, recommends that we acknowledge that people will be multitasking. Yes, if you saw where my setup is today, you would see that I've got my phone going, screens going, multitasking just to keep up with all of you. That's just what we expect in a virtual world right now. Last piece I will tell you is that we've got a poll on how COVID-19 has impacted customer experience. 63% of you say dramatically, we've had to change everything. And you remember the choices were, business as usual, somewhat, and then dramatically. And I will just tell you that I'm surprised at how many of you said dramatically, we've had to change everything. Wow, great information. Thank you. So go into your chat box, you will see the link for YoTribe. Click on it, take your picture, answer the icebreaker question, and once you're in, see where you want to go, click on it, hold down the button, and your avatar will slide into that room. I am looking forward to seeing you there and hanging out with you. Let's make our way over to YoTribe and our conversation corners now.